Oh my gosh, hello, good morning. Hello people. What day is it? Tuesday? Happy Tuesday morning. I don't even know what day it is. This is my 1 day off between an 8-day work stretch and a 3-day work stretch. So I have today off and then I don't have another day off until Saturday. But it's okay. Making that money. Sad in the meantime, but making that money. I hope everybody is doing well. I was originally planning to stream tonight because I had 406 errands I had to do on my day off. I know, depressing. But stuff got shifted around for me today, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I ended up with a free morning and not a free evening, so I'd moved my stream to the morning. Sorry to anybody who's watching this after the fact that could not be here because I switched the time, but I am happy for those who are here, even though the mornings are typically quieter and book streams are even quieter than that, but that's okay. Hello to everyone's here. Thank you for the host terror earlier. Good morning to you, and Alice, it really is great to see you again. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. Let me just sip a little bit of my coffee in my Charleston mug. I literally woke up, put some laundry in, started a load of dishes, jumped in the shower, that's why my hair's still wet, and went live. You guys let me know if the music ever becomes too loud or distracting. I'll cut it down. Anyway, working on the Treasure in the Royal Tower book. I read 5 chapters the first chunk of book. Good morning, Rob. Thank you so much for the host. Great to have you. Hope you're doing well. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's great to stay up. Whoa! You're yellow. What happened to the silver? You went from silver to copper to back to silver and now you're yellow? It's all good, just wondering. Okay, so I read 5 chapters the first chunk. I plan to read 5 chapters again Whoa. 5 chapters again this chunk, and then the last chunk will be 6 chapters. Okay, that's fair, that's fair. Looking good in the yellow. Alright. With further ado, because I need more of this. I also think I might be getting a slight cold, because I've been getting, a little sinusy, which is sad. But anyway. For real though, guys, just yell at me if the music is loud or distracting. I think I'm going to cut it down just a little bit more. Okay. Alright. Without further ado. Chapter 6. The Figure in Black. The girls jumped to their feet and hurried into the hallway outside their room. This way, Nancy said, nodding toward the right. As they ran down the hall, the shouts for help became louder and louder. Following the sound of the women's cries, they turned down the small side hallway leading to the back elevator. Nancy found a light switch and snapped it on. Behind that door on the left, Nancy called, pointing to a narrow door with a tarnished brass knob. The shouts are coming from there. She grabbed the doorknob and gave it a hard pull, but it wouldn't open. "Somebody help me!" the woman shouted. "I'm locked in!" The door rattled wildly. "Somebody, please!" "That sounds like Lisa," Bess said. "It sure does, Bess," Nancy said, giving the doorknob another tug. "Lisa, is that you?" "Yes," Lisa called back. "Hey, Nancy, get me out of here, will you?" "We're trying, Lisa," Nancy replied. "Hang on." "What happened?" said a woman's voice behind them. "Can I help?" "Oh, Dr. Alvarez," Nancy said, turning around to see the doctor striding down the hall toward them. "It's Lisa. She's locked in here." "How'd she do that?" Meg Alvarez asked as she hurried up next to her mother. Before Nancy could answer, Professor Hotchkiss also came around the corner from the main hallway. "What on earth is going on?" he asked. "I was in my room and I heard all this commotion." Quickly, George explained Lisa's predicament. But doesn't anyone have a duplicate key? The professor asked. Yes, sir, I do, sir, a voice down the hall called out. Everyone turned to see Dexter Egan's short, stout figure trotting toward the door. A large ring of keys dangled from his belt. Don't understand how this could have happened, he muttered as he fumbled for the right key. How'd the lady get locked in this way? He pulled a very large, rusty-looking key from the ring, slid it in the lock, and turned it. Lisa burst through the open door, dressed in jeans and a pullover, her camera dangling around her neck. Who locked me in there? She demanded angrily. Wait a minute, Lisa, Bess said. What makes you think somebody locked you in? Of course somebody locked me in, Lisa said impatiently. A key was sitting right there in the keyhole. I saw it. It was a large, old-looking key, almost like an antique. I turned the key and opened the door so I could check out those crazy stairs. I guess the door swung shut behind me. When I found out what the stairs were all about, I headed back down in a hurry, but by then the door was locked. I want to know who locked it and why. Dexter cleared his throat. The lady's right about that key, he said gruffly. I saw it there myself this morning, just like it usually is. But why would anyone lock you in? Professor Hotchkiss asked. Lisa glared at him. I don't know, Professor, she said. Do you? You're the one who was talking at dinner last night about the stairs that led nowhere. You knew they were here. Nancy held up her hand. Wait a minute, everybody, she said. Let's start at the beginning. Lisa, why were you checking out these stairs in the first place? Lisa sighed impatiently. I'm writing a new article for Ski World and need a good photograph to go with it, she said. I always do my own photography, so I wanted a panoramic nighttime shot of the slopes, and I thought I could get a good angle from high up in the castle. I happened to open this door, which was unlocked, and I saw these stairs. I figured they led to another floor. That's logical, Dr. Alvarez commented. Yeah, well, those stairs are phony, Lisa said with disgust. They go up about 20 steps to a landing, turn a corner, and then they run right into a wall. The stairs just stop. It's stupid. Professor Hotchkiss cleared his throat. Those are the stairs I was talking about the other night, he said. The day I arrived, I was wandering around the castle, and I too saw the key in the lock. Like I said, it's always kept there, Dexter Egan put in, scratching his grizzled head. I turned the key, opened the door, and started up the stairs, the professor continued. I discovered just what Lisa has found. These stairs go nowhere. Old Mr. Wickford had 'em built that way, Dexter said with an odd chuckle. At that moment, Mark and Christy came running down the hall. What happened? Christy asked in a worried voice. Those dumb stairs, Lisa replied. I got trapped in there. Oh no, Christy said. Wasn't the key in the lock outside? Yes, and somebody turned it and locked me in, Lisa declared, giving her camera strap a frustrated tug. If the stairs don't go anywhere, why don't you just board the dumb things up? Mark winced. Board up the castle's eccentric features? He said soothingly. We've always thought that was one of the things that makes the castle a special place to stay. It is true, those are the touches that make this place charming, Dr. Alvarez said. Well, you try getting locked into a tiny, dark place like that, and you see how charming it is then, Lisa fumed. You're right, Lisa, Christy said. I don't know why we left that key in the lock. I guess it never occurred to us that anybody would turn the key while someone else was up there. Nancy traded glances with Bess and George. Christy had a point, Nancy was thinking. It was odd that anyone would turn the key on Lisa. Had it been an accident, or did someone mean to trap her? And where was the key now? We're just glad you're all right, Mark said to Lisa. Please accept our apologies. Dexter, first thing tomorrow, please remove this lock from this door. That way this kind of incident can never happen again. Lisa made a little huffing sound, but she seemed placated. Dr. Alvarez and Meg walked with her back to the second floor while the other guests headed back to their rooms. As the girls left, Nancy turned to see Dexter Egan kneel beside the door to steady the lock. He looked up and saw her watching him. Nancy turned away and quickly walked on, but she couldn't shake the impression that he had given her a very nasty look. I think I'm going to quit early today, Nancy said the next afternoon as the girls skied to the bottom of the slopes. She peered up through the heavily falling snow. With this snow coming down this hard, it's impossible to see the trail. I'm with you, Nancy, George agreed. I nearly collided with another skier over on the back slope. I'm ready to call it a day too, Bess put in. Let's go get hot chocolate and a donut. But we just had lunch, George groaned. I know, Bess said, but still... Hey guys, Nancy interrupted them. I never noticed those snowmobiles before. Look, right over there next to the Queen's Tower. She pointed toward the far end of the castle beside the round tower. 20 or so snowmobiles sat parked in 2 rows a few yards from the castle walls. Someone in a black snowmobile suit was brushing the snow off the windshield on one of them. Maybe we could go snowmobiling instead, George said eagerly. That would be cool. Let's take these skis off, stash them in the lockers, change boots, and go take a look, Nancy said. In this snowfall, maybe a snowmobile ride would be easier than skiing. The girls quickly went to change their gear, but when they came out the doors from the locker room a few minutes later, there was no one near the snowmobiles. Who's in charge? Bess asked as they crunched along the snowy path toward the snowmobiles. I thought I saw someone over here before. Strange, Nancy said. Whoever it was seems to have disappeared. Hey, neat, George said. She climbed onto a shiny red snowmobile and peered down at the dashboard. The key is right here in the ignition. Maybe we're supposed to just jump on and go? Maybe we can, Nancy said uncertainly. Still, I wonder where that guy went. She threaded through the rows of snowmobiles, heading toward the other side of the Queen's Tower. Maybe he's around here, she said. She rounded the curved wall, leaving George and Bess behind. Then Nancy halted in her tracks. About 10 feet away, someone in a black snowmobile suit was standing beside the tower, tugging on something attached to the outside wall. Nancy's footsteps were muffled by the snow, and the person seemed not to know that she was there. She squinted through the falling snow, trying to see what the person was doing. The bulky black snowmobile suit made it hard for Nancy to tell if it was a man or woman. The snowmobile helmet totally hid his or her face, too. Nancy judged that the person was of medium height, but even that was hard to tell for sure. What was this character tugging on so hard? Nancy wondered. Could this be an outside entrance to the Queen's Tower? Hey, Nancy, George called around the corner. You gotta see this thing. It's unreal. Startled by the sound of George's voice, the figure in black swung around, instantly spotting Nancy. Jerking away from the wall, whoever it was began to run through the falling snow toward the parked snowmobiles. Nancy sprang forward, trying to grab a black-clad arm, but the person dodged her and Nancy slipped, falling forward into a pile of snow. Scrambling back to her feet, Nancy looked up to see the person jump onto the nearest snowmobile. George and Bess had just seen what was going on and were moving in that direction, but the figure in black had a pretty good head start. He or she reached into the pocket of the bulky suit and pulled out a key. Nancy saw a shiny object also fall out of the pocket and into the snow. The figure in black jammed the key into the snowmobile ignition and the engine roared to life. The girls were closing in from both sides, but they were still a few yards away. Then the rider turned and gave the nearest snowmobile a fierce kick in Nancy's direction. The heavy blue snowmobile slid sideways, knocking Nancy to the ground. Her left leg sank into the snow beneath the heavy machine's runners. She lay there helplessly watching while the rider in black roared away in a great whoosh of snow. End of chapter 6. Oh my gosh! Thank you so much for that resub! I really, really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Good morning to you, by the way. Meg, Rob's favorite character. I'm catching up on the chat here. Aw, hi Moocher! Thank you for those bits. And thank you for that resub. Nancy said. I'm just laughing at all of Tara's quips. Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you so much, Summer. Oh, I forget. Time change. Good afternoon then to you, Moocher. Hope you're doing well. I'm glad you finally caught a book stream. I know these are your favorite. I need to go blow my nose. I apologize. Be right back. All right. Let me drink some more coffee. Hope you guys' mornings are starting out nice. Okay, Chapter 7. George's Chase. Nancy, are you okay? George called out as she and Bess hurried toward their friend. I think so, Nancy said, but please get the snowmobile off of me. Quickly, the cousins ran to Nancy's side and struggled to lift the heavy machine. A moment later, they heaved it back into its upright position. Nancy gingerly slid her leg to one side. You guys wait here, I'm going after that idiot, George declared. She swung onto another snowmobile, turned its ignition key, and gunned the engine. As she shifted it into gear, the snowmobile slid wildly to one side, but George quickly got it under control and roared off toward the woods. How does your leg feel? Bess asked Nancy anxiously. Nancy gave her leg a careful stretch. It did get banged pretty badly, she admitted. Let's see if I can walk on it. With Bess's help, Nancy raised herself onto her right leg. Then she set down her left foot and tested it. She winced, but hobbled over to where the bright object had fallen from the black figure's pocket. I thought I saw something, she murmured, leaning down looking in the snow. What is it? Bess asked, catching up to her and leaning over her shoulder. It's a key, Nancy said, picking up the shiny shape and turning it over in her gloved hand. A very large and old key. Hey, that rings a bell, Bess said, looking at Nancy. It sure does, Bess, Nancy said. This looks just like the key Dexter Egan used last night to let Lisa out of the false staircase. Could this be the key that was in the lock when Lisa went in there? Bess asked. It sure could be, Nancy said, and the person who just buzzed off on that snowmobile dropped it. That makes me think it's the same person who locked Lisa in the stairway. Someone who's sure up to no good, Bess said. Why did that wacko knock the snowmobile over on you? I think I saw something that our friend didn't want anyone to see, Nancy said. When I went around the corner, I saw that person pulling on something on the wall of the tower. It might be the secret entrance that we were hoping to find. Let's go check it out, Bess said eagerly. Leaning on Bess's shoulder, Nancy limped around the curving wall of the tower. Following footprints in the snow, they found the spot where the person in black had been standing. Nancy crouched down to examine the footprints. I can't tell much from this, she said to Bess. The person was wearing thick, heavy boots. These footprints seem large, but with a couple pairs of socks on, even someone with small feet might be comfortable in boots this size. Then Nancy stood up and ran her hand along the tower's stone wall. A thin layer of falling snow had blown against the stone, and small clumps of frozen ivy clung to the wall. But there was one tiny area, about 4 feet above the ground, that had been brushed bare. Nancy bent down to look at it more closely. A small stone, rounded like a smooth mound, projected from the wall there. Nancy took off one glove and groped along the raised surface. Maybe this is what our friend was yanking on, she said. Nancy, I bet it's a secret door handle, Bess exclaimed. Nancy wrapped her hand around the knob of stone and struggled to get a firm grasp. By grabbing it a certain way, it was possible to give it a tug, but when she tugged, nothing happened. Bess gave a disappointed sigh. No luck, huh? She said. Nancy straightened up. If it does work, I can't figure out the trick, she confessed. Maybe we could try it another time, but right now... She paused. This leg is really starting to hurt. I don't want to make it worse by standing on it too long. Maybe I'd better go inside and give it a rest for a while. Nancy, you should have said something, Bess said earnestly. You get off that foot right away. Bess pulled Nancy's left arm around her shoulder to support her on that side. The two girls headed back toward the locker room doors, Nancy hobbling painfully. Sorry. There is one other thing we need to check out, though, Bess, Nancy said as they made their way along the slippery path. Could you take the key we just found and go up to the 3rd floor? Stick the key in that lock and see if it works. That way we'll know for sure if it was the key to the false staircase. And then we'll know for sure that the black snowmobiler is the same person who locked up Lisa, Bess added. Nancy gritted her teeth as they maneuvered down the steps to the locker room entrance. Only one problem, she said. I just remembered. Mark asked Dexter to remove the lock on that door. That's right, Bess said. If he's already done that, we may never know if it's the same key. Nancy moved to a bench right by the locker room doors and dropped onto it. Well, Mark and Christy should still have a copy of the key, she said. If the lock's been removed, find them and see if this key matches theirs. Meanwhile, I'll sit up here and keep an eye out for George. Bess gave her a worried frown. While I'm upstairs, she asked, how about if I hunt down Dr. Alvarez? Maybe she'll come take a look at your leg? That's a good idea, Bess, Nancy agreed, lifting her leg to stretch it out on the bench beside her. But don't tell her exactly what happened. I don't want anyone to know about that mystery person we were chasing. She gave a wry smile. I'll be waiting right here. Bess took the key from Nancy, waved a mittened hand, and slipped inside through the door. Nancy leaned back against the wall of the castle and breathed deeply, trying to ease the pain in her leg. In the distance, she heard the roar of an engine. A moment later, she saw George come charging out of the woods on her snowmobile, bumping along the surface of the snow. Nancy waved her arm to catch George's attention. George steered over to the entrance, pulled up, and snapped off the ignition. "I looked everywhere for that jerk," she said in disgust as she climbed off the snowmobile, "but there was no sign anywhere, and there were so many other tracks in the woods I couldn't even tell which way the snowmobile had gone." Nancy heaved a sigh. "Tough luck," she said. "I really hoped you'd catch that character. It looks like he or she's involved in even more of the stuff that's been going on." "Really?" George asked. She bounded down the steps to sit on the bench beside Nancy. "Like what?" Nancy told George about finding the old-fashioned door key in the snow. "Bess has gone inside to check out whether it's the key that locked Lisa in the staircase," she said. "What do you think this guy's up to, Nancy?" George wondered. "I mean, why would anyone want to lock Lisa up in a staircase? What was the point of shoving that snowmobile over on you?" "I can't answer your question about Lisa yet," Nancy said, "but I think I know why I got my leg crushed." She went on to tell George what she'd seen the figure in the black doing by the tower wall. Then she described what she and Bess had found on the wall. "I'll bet it's the secret entrance, Nan," George said. "We have to go back and try that again, but not today. It looks like you need to go inside and get some help for that leg." "Bess is trying to find Dr. Alvarez for me," Nancy said, "but I guess they can just find us as easily if we go inside here. I have to admit, the cold is starting to get to me." And she shivered. "Good idea," George said. "There shouldn't be anyone in the locker room at this time of day. Everyone else is probably still out on the slopes." George helped Nancy through the door and settled her onto a bench inside. They eased off Nancy's boot and rolled up the left leg of her pants. A huge purple bruise covered Nancy's shin almost all the way up to her knee, and the skin was broken in a couple of places. Already the bruised part was starting to swell up. The two girls were bent over intently examining Nancy's leg when they heard the click of the outside door latch. They both looked up. "I guess someone else is coming in from the cold too," George said. With a burst of snow and wind, the door swung open. "Well, hello there, girls," said a booming male voice. "Great snow today, yes?" The two girls gasped in disbelief. It was Professor Hotchkiss, wearing a black snowmobile suit. End of chapter 7. Why is my nose so... I'm sorry, I think I'm getting a cold. Woke up at 3 a.m. today. Holy flip. Hi, Tomas. I don't know if you're still here. But hi. Good afternoon. George's Chase. For hot chocolate and donut. After sealing. You are making Akfi. Sounds delicious. The V-Lools. That's fine, Tomas. Don't worry. I just wanted to say hello. Hello back to you. What is going on over here with my desk? Thank you. Let me turn back this way because it's more comfortable. The very intense music for this reading. Ooh, is that the coconut stuff? The Kona blend? Is that like the coconut K-cup stuff? Oh, you don't have Keurig, but is that like the coconut grounds? It's very entertaining though, Tara. I've only been live for 29 minutes. I have 3 more chapters to go. I'm trying to like pace between coffee and water. Lately, coffee has been giving me like jitters, which is totally unusual for me. It is all good. It's all good, Tara. Oh, I know nothing about coffee beans, apparently. Okay. Moving along. Chapter 8, The Circular Stairs. Let me drink another sip of water. I'm trying to quell this snot. That was TMI, my apologies. Tropical. Okay, Chapter 8, The Circular Stairs. With a cheerful wave, the professor paused to shake the snow off his black snowmobile outfit and heavy boots. Then he trudged across the locker room, heading toward the stairs to the main lobby. "Professor Hotchkiss?" Nancy called out from the bench. "May we speak to you for a moment?" The professor turned and faced the girls. "Yes, of course, Nancy," he replied, puzzled. "I just noticed your suit," Nancy said. "Have you been out snowmobiling?" "Well, yes," he replied, looking uneasy. "Why do you ask?" "A little while ago we ran into someone over by the snowmobiles," Nancy said, carefully watching the reaction on his face. "We couldn't tell who it was, but the person was dressed in black just like you are. Was it you?" The muscles in the professor's face tightened. "No," he said curtly. "Whomever you saw, it was not I. No one was around when I went out on my snowmobile or when I returned, and I must say I find it odd that you should ask me this." "It may seem odd, Professor," Nancy said, "but it's crucial we know who this person was." "Why on earth?" the professor asked haughtily. Nancy hesitated, her mind racing. What excuse could she give for her question? She couldn't let the professor know she was investigating a mystery. Before she could answer, the sound of voices drifted down the stairs from the lobby. "That must be Bess and Dr. Alvarez," George said. Nancy looked over to the steps, relieved to be interrupted. Seconds later, Bess and the doctor walked into the locker room. "There she is," Dr. Alvarez said brightly. "Bess tells me a snowmobile accidentally fell on your leg, Nancy? Let me take a look at it." Behind Dr. Alvarez, Nancy saw Bess staring open-mouthed at the professor in his black outfit. The professor backed away, looking caged. Then he turned and hurried up the stairs without another word. "Was he the one we saw?" Bess asked George in a low voice. "He said it wasn't him," George murmured softly. "We'll tell you later." Meanwhile, Dr. Alvarez prodded at Nancy's injured leg with her skillful hands. "You have a bad bruise, Nancy," she finally said, "but I don't see any sign of a sprain or broken bones. I recommend you just give it as much rest as possible. Except for going to meals, stay off it tonight. Tomorrow you can walk around a bit, but don't try any sports. It should feel fine after that." Nancy agreed and thanked her. Dr. Alvarez patted Nancy's leg, stood up, and said goodbye to the girls. After the doctor had left, George suggested that they take the elevator upstairs. "You shouldn't climb those stairs, Nancy," she said, "and just because we got stuck once doesn't mean it'll happen again." "I agree, it's worth the risk," Nancy said. With her friend's help, she limped down the corridor to the small elevator. "What'd you learn about that key?" Nancy asked Bess as they rode up. Bess nodded happily. "It fits," she reported. "Dexter hasn't removed the lock yet. I pushed the key right into the hole and turned the lock." "So the figure in black must be the same person who locked Lisa into the staircase," Nancy said. "Do you think it's Professor Hotchkiss?" George asked. "The person out there did seem to have a bulky build," Nancy said, "just like the professor, but whoever it was may have just layered a lot of clothes under the snowmobile suit. The person also seemed roughly the same height as the professor, but it's hard to judge with the helmet and the boots on." "The professor doesn't seem like the type to push a snowmobile over on someone," Bess said. "He seems like all talk and no action." "You never know," Nancy said, "and he does have a motive. With his interest in French history and Marie Antoinette, it figures that he'd like to find that tower room." "But why would he lock Lisa in the stairs?" George asked as the elevator stopped, safely this time, right at the 3rd floor. "I have to admit I have no idea," Nancy said with a sigh. She pushed open the door. "But I'd still put him high on our list of suspects right now." That night, long after dinner, the three friends sat in their room going over the plans to the castle. "It's just as we thought," George was saying. "Here's the 3rd floor. This is the corridor we went down Sunday night when we heard the hammering and the footsteps. See, it butts up against the round tower." "But there's no doorway drawn at the end of the hall," Bess said. "Mark and Christy had these plans drawn after they moved in," Nancy reminded her. "If the tower was already sealed up, a door wouldn't be shown there." She pulled out another sheet of plans. "Here's the plan for the lower level. I just wanted to check where that hallway leads to, the one from the locker room to the elevator." She traced the blueprint with her finger. It makes a few turns, Nancy said, but after that it straightens out and runs along this wall of the castle, but there's no rooms along it. Just like the corridor on the 3rd floor, Bess commented. Why would anyone build hallways like that? As they sat silently studying the plans, suddenly they heard familiar sounds in the distance. All 3 girls sat up, straining to listen. Those thudding sounds, George said. Right, Nancy replied, coming from down the hall. She started to climb out of bed. Let's go. Nancy, Bess said, holding her arm. No way, Dr. Alvarez said you should rest that leg. Bess is right, George said, jumping up and grabbing some jeans. You're staying here. We'll check it out and come tell you what we found. Oh, all right, Nancy said with a sigh as she sank back onto the bed. She hated to miss the hunting down of a clue, but she knew that the cousins were right. She really should give her leg a rest. Her friends hurriedly threw on their clothes and slipped out of the room. Nancy restlessly went back to studying the plans. She laid the pages for the lower level and the 3rd floor next to each other. Carefully, she compared the layouts of the 2 corridors. She thought to herself. Both hallways ran along the same wall of the castle. In fact, they were located right on top of each other, which meant that the doorknob turned, and the cousins ran in. Nancy, Bess said breathlessly, dropping down on the edge of the bed. We not only heard the thudding sounds, we heard the footsteps too. They were going up the stairs and they faded away, just like before. If we could only find a way through that wall, George fretted. I think I know where we can find it, Nancy said. She swung her legs over the side of her bed and reached for her sweats. Nancy, you can't, George started to say. Yes, I can, Nancy said. I'll take it easy, I promise, but we have to get into that tower. How? Bess asked. By going down to the basement, Nancy said, standing up and grabbing her pin light and her lock-picking kit. That corridor downstairs leads right to the Queen's Tower, too. If there's an entrance anywhere, it would be down there, wouldn't it? Come on, it's time to find out. They didn't hesitate to take the elevator to the basement. They knew there was no time to waste. When they stepped out downstairs, they turned in the opposite direction, away from the locker room. Nancy switched on her pen light so they could find their way down the pitch-dark corridor. Hey guys, Nancy said at last, another dead end. She ran the pen light's beam up and down a brown wood wall at the end of the hall. Do you think there's a door there? George asked. Let's hope, Nancy said, approaching the wall. Her light soon picked out a small, S-shaped door handle. Wouldn't you know, it's locked, she reported. It's locked. She rattled the knob and then took her lock-picking kit from her pocket. Bess, shine the light on this lock, she said, handing her pen light to Bess. After a few seconds of delicate manipulation, Nancy heard the tumblers fall into place. I got it, she announced. She gave the door handle a turn and gently pushed the door open. Cautiously, the girls stepped into a small, windowless room about the size of a roomy closet. Hey, look at these walls, Bess said, shining the pen light around. I never saw anything like that. What are all those carvings? Nancy stepped over and examined the carvings with her fingertips. They're shaped like feathers, she said. This entire wall is covered with thick carvings of wooden feathers. Sure is weird, Bess said, touching the intricate carvings. Why would anyone make a wall like this? Possibly to conceal something? Nancy murmured as she groped along the wall. One of the best ways to hide something is to make it blend in with its surroundings. But what? Nancy started to ask. Here we go, Nancy interrupted. This carving right here, see how it sticks out? I'll bet this is what we're looking for. Nancy gave the thick wooden feather a push. A low humming sound rose from the back wall. The three girls spun around to face it, and Bess flashed the pin light that way. They saw an oak panel slowly rising, revealing a large dark opening. Taking the pin light from Bess, Nancy stepped inside the opening and ran the beam along a curved stone wall. The inside of the Queen's Tower, she said excitedly. We found it! And will you look at those stairs, Bess said. A wooden circular staircase wound along the curved wall, spiraling upward into the darkness. Come on, guys, let's go, Nancy said excitedly as she started up the first few steps. Be careful, Nan, George said. Are you sure your leg can stand that climb? I'll go slowly, Nancy promised. Well, don't lean on this railing too much, George warned, holding onto the frail banister. It's pretty loose in places. I know, but we can't stop now, Nancy said as she climbed upward. Watch out, she called back a moment later. Some of these stairs are really rickety. You could go right through them. As the girls climbed cautiously upward, they began to hear the familiar thudding sounds, faint at first but growing louder. We're on the right track, Nancy said softly, shining her beam ahead. I think I can see the top of the stairs now, but I don't see any door up there. You're right, Nancy, George said. It looks like those steps just go straight up and then stop. I hope this isn't another one of Ezra Wickford's dead ends, Bess said, looking uneasily back downward. There must be some sort of a door or exit up here, Nancy said firmly. She shone her light along the wall, running her fingers up and down the dusty surface. There, that feels like a latch. She pushed hard with her free hand. A narrow door swung open. The three girls stepped through the door and into a small, square landing. Now we're much closer to that thudding sound, George remarked softly. Shh! Nancy pointed to a closed door straight ahead of them. A bright light streamed through the thin crack around its edges. Somebody's in there, Bess whispered, and that's definitely where the noises are coming from. Nancy nodded as she moved quietly toward the door with George and Bess close behind. Nancy put her hand on the ornate brass doorknob and gave it a gentle turn. The door swung slowly open. Through the door, the girls saw a dazzling round room, its walls covered with brilliant embossed gold. But their eyes flew immediately to the far side of the room. All three gasped in surprise. A man crouched close to the wall, glaring at them, a hammer clutched menacingly in one hand. It was Jacques Brunet. End of chapter 8. Let me catch up. Tropical. Oh, I was saying it like in, Hi, Holland. That scared me half to death. Good Lord. That was terrible. It was stuttering. I was saying tropical, like in Danger by Design, when Nancy does the parfaits, and one of the parfaits that somebody can order is a tropical, so that's why I said it that way, and I don't know why, but I did. So that was the reason. The Dole Plantation? Do they just have like tons of pineapples everywhere? Yeah, I've never been outside of the continental US. Papple? Give me some of that papple. Yeah, they understand. You have 3 friends living in Hawaii? That's a perfect reason to go. What, Rob? Oh, Alice, thank you so much for being here. Have a great day at school. I know you're probably not here already, but it was great to see you again. Have a wonderful day. Papple makes me think of pen, pineapple, apple, pen. I hope somebody goes right through the stairs. That'd be hilarious and definitely the work of the sentient snowmobile. I like dusty rooms. I appreciate you waiting between chapters for your song. I'm catching up on chat, that's why I'm being so delayed. Babanas? I'm so confused by all of this talk of pineapples and pears and Catholic Church. I'm so confused. And babanas, I don't know what that is either. 2 more chapters to go. When I get a chance, either today sometime or tomorrow between work and my Wednesday evening activities, I'm gonna try to plug into my bot the rest of the commands and or ticket redemption things that we had come up with. Oh, Papple Power. Okay. Anyways, sorry. Oh, duh. Okay. I thought you were just being facetious. I can't remember all the Ni no Kuni things as I watch them. I'm sorry. There's so much Ni no Kuni things and I can't remember all of them. I'm sorry. I know what you're talking about now. I'm sorry. I just never remember the names of things. And I'm not Catholic, so I don't know a lot of Catholic specific terms, and I apologize. I work with a guy whose last name is pronounced Pappy. That makes me, I'm totally derailing here, and I'm sorry for anybody who's watching this on YouTube and does not like it when I talk between chapters and leave aggressive comments on my videos about me talking between chapters, but now I'm on a rabbit trail, so I'm just gonna run with it. Pappy makes me think of that show that I used to watch, like, as a young kid. Pappy Drew It, you know? I hope it came on PBS, if you guys remember that, and it was like Pappy, and he would teach you how to draw and color. And I would always color while I watched Pappy Drew It, because it would make me feel like I was watching, it made me feel like I was drawing with Pappy Drew It, even though I was just coloring in my coloring books. Oh, I'm glad you watched it too. I'm glad you guys know what I'm talking about. It was a great show. I don't think Pappy's alive anymore. I looked it up a few years ago and I don't remember exactly what I found out, but I don't think that he's living anymore, sadly. Okay. 2 more chapters. Here we go. Chapter 9. The Secret Room. It's not written that way, but... Okay. That's right, Rob. Okay. What are you doing here? Jacques Brunet asked sharply, straightening up. How'd you find this room? How'd you get in the tower? He tightened his grip on the hammer. Why don't you tell us why you're here? Nancy said, wanting to get the upper hand. And what are you doing to that wall? She pointed to the wall behind him where a small patch of the gold paneling had been pulled off. That's none of your business, Jacques spat out defiantly in his thick French accent. Mark and Christy asked us to investigate the strange noises they heard at night, Nancy said. We followed the noises and that led us here. They also asked us to find out who vandalized the library. What you're doing here sure looks like vandalism. Mark and Christy could bring criminal charges against you for this. Nancy's bluff worked. Jacques' muscular body seemed to sag. That could get me deported back to France, he said with a groan, dropping his eyes. He plopped down on a small stool next to his tools and buried his handsome face in his hands. I guess I'd better tell you the whole story. The 3 girls had crossed the room to face him, waiting for his explanation. Back in the 1920s, Jacques began, lifting his head with a sigh. Ezra Wickford, the man who built Wickford Castle, was traveling in France. He visited Chateau Rochemont, which was built long ago by a French duke and duchess. From people in town, Mr. Wickford heard that Marie Antoinette and her husband, King Louis XVI, used to visit the duke and duchess there. He became fascinated with the chateau, especially with this tower where Marie Antoinette supposedly stayed during her visits there. So he decided to buy the tower? Bess asked. Yes, Jacques replied, and he had the entire tower imported from France to Wisconsin. He wanted the tower to be exactly as it was when Marie Antoinette lived. Jacques swept his arm around, showing off the round room's ornate gold walls. Someone told him that this was Marie Antoinette's private writing room, designed just for her. The handsome skier went on. Look closely at these walls. They are made of many small pieces, each carved like a tiny leaf and then coated with gold. They're beautiful, Bess said, reaching out gently to touch the wall beside her. Each piece was carved by hand, then mounted on thick wall panels, he explained, pointing to the spot on the wall where he had removed a few pieces. See how each leaf fits tightly into its own piece on the panel? They're like a jigsaw puzzle. It's incredible, George said, kneeling down to examine the intricate wall design. The crystal chandelier, Jacques went on, pointing toward the ceiling, was put in for the queen, or so the story goes. The girl stared upward at an immense chandelier in the middle of the high ceiling. At least 100 crystal pendants now coated with dust dangled from it. Its light bounced off the gilt walls and cast the whole room in a golden glow. In France, it was lit by candles. Jacques told them. When Mr. Wickford brought it here, he must have had it wired for electric lights instead. Only a few bulbs are in now, but when they're all there, imagine how this light would dazzle. From his tone of voice, Nancy could tell that Jacques loved this room. She realized that his threatening manner earlier had just been a scared reflex. He would never damage this beautiful place. Mr. Wickford must have loved this room, Bess said, so why did he make it so hard to get in? Maybe he wanted it as his own private refuge, Jacques said, shrugging. All I know is I had to explore every corridor before I found the stairs, and then it took more time to find the right carved feather to push. We were guided by the sound of your hammering, Nancy explained. How did you know where to look? How did you even know this room was here? That's another story, Jacques said. You see, I grew up in a village near the French Alps, not far from Chateau Rochemont. In the 1920s, when the tower was taken apart, my great-grandfather was the master carpenter. He helped prepare it for shipment to America. There was no detail about it that he didn't know. He talked about it often through the years, about how beautiful it was. I loved hearing those stories when I was a boy. I can imagine, Bess said with a sigh. She settled herself on the floor by Jacques' feet, gazing up at his rugged, good-looking face. But there was one secret about the room that my great-grandfather told nobody, Jacques went on. He told me the secret the night he died, me and no one else. The girls sat quietly, scarcely daring to breathe, waiting for Jacques to go on. When he prepared this room for shipment to Wisconsin, Jacques said, he had to take down the wall boards with the gold leaves attached. Each board is about 6 inches thick, you see, so they're very heavy. When he was doing this, a loose gold leaf fell off its panel. Behind it, my great-grandfather found a small secret niche carved into the wallboard. It had been hidden from view by the gold leaf. Tucked inside the niche was a bundle of letters tied up with a pink ribbon. A little excited gasp escaped Bess. My great-grandfather untied the ribbon and looked at the letters, Jacques said, his gray eyes gleaming with the thrill of his story. What did the letters say? Nancy asked. Unfortunately, Jacques said, my great-grandfather, like so many working people of that time, could not read or write very well. But he felt sure that the letters had been written by Marie Antoinette. On the back of each one was the seal of a signet ring, a seal that he knew was the Queen's crest. He had seen that crest on some old tapestries in the chateau. What did he do with the letters? George asked. He was standing there wondering what to do, Jacques said, when some other carpenters came in the room. Before anyone could see him, he hid the bundle back in the niche and covered it up with the gold leaf. He planned to go back and get the letters the next day, but an unfortunate thing happened. What was that? Nancy asked. The next morning, Jacques said, workers came in early and packed all the wall panels in big crates. When he arrived, my great-grandfather had no idea which wall panel the niche was in. They all looked so much alike. He went through many crates searching for the panel with the secret niche, but he never found it, and the next day the crates were loaded onto wagons and taken away. How sad, Bess said softly. I don't think my great-grandfather ever got them out of his mind, Jacques said. On his deathbed, he told this story to me, his favorite great-grandson. He asked me to promise that I would come to America, to Wisconsin, and find the letters and restore them to France. And that's why you came to America? George asked. Yes, Jacques replied. It took a few years, but finally I saved up enough money to make the trip. Once I was in Wisconsin, it didn't take me long to find Wickford Castle. When I learned that it had become a ski lodge, I knew I was in luck. As an experienced skier, I was sure I could get a job here as a ski instructor. And during the evenings, Nancy said, you searched for the secret room. Yes, Jacques said. Finally, I found it. Then I began my real search looking for the letters. Night after night, I have been coming up here, taking each leaf one by one from the wall. He laid his hand on the gold-carved wall. If I do not see the niche, I put the leaf back and try another one. It seems like the job will never end, but I won't give up. I know the letters are here somewhere. But Jacques, Nancy said, what if someone else found them long time ago? Like maybe one of the carpenters who reassembled the room when it first came here. That's not likely, Jacques said. When the room was reassembled, they only had to put the panels back on the walls. The gold leaves would not have needed to be taken off. And obviously, no repairs were made in later years. He pointed to tiny cracks in the leaves and places where the gold paint had flaked off. This has not been touched for decades. No one else knows about the hidden letters, Nancy asked. No clues left anywhere? I do not know, Jacques admitted. Mark and Christy say that the books in the library downstairs also came from the Chateau Rochemont. They were all shipped over here along with the tower. I've wondered if any of those books contained clues. You mean if someone long ago left a note in the book about where the letters were? Bess asked. Something like that, Jacques said. I've looked through the library, hoping that I might find something, but I never have. Nancy paused, thinking of the scattered books downstairs. They had obviously been read recently. Jacques, she asked gravely, were you the one who ransacked that library? Jacques' handsome face flushed. Definitely no, he said. I would never harm those precious old books. Nancy didn't ask him about the gouged-out wall panel in the library, but she thought to herself that someone seemed to have been looking there for a niche, just like the niche that Jacques' great-grandfather had described to him. Did this tower have an outside entrance? Bess asked Jacques. Following Bess's train of thought, Nancy remembered the figure in the black snowmobile suit tugging on the stone in the tower wall. Jacques frowned. Not that I know of, he said, but I didn't look there. The skier stood up. Now I've told you my entire story, he said. You're not going to report me to Mark and Christy, are you? I do not want to lose my job, and I do not want to be sent back to France. He clenched his fists at his sides. Please, not until I've found the letters. We won't, Bess promised eagerly. Wait a minute, Bess, Nancy said. Mark and Christy asked us to look into this case. We can't keep information from them. She studied Jacques' anxious face. Instead of us telling Mark and Christy, what if you tell them yourself? Explain the whole story just as you did to us. Mark might even have information that would help you in your search. I bet they'll understand, Jacques, Bess said, still gazing starry-eyed at him. If you three will go with me, Jacques said staunchly, then I'll do it. Tomorrow morning before breakfast. Great, Nancy said. We'll meet you in the lounge around 8? Fine, Jacques said, following Nancy and her friends as they moved toward the door. Thank you, girls, for being so kind. No problem, Jacques, Bess said, giving him an adoring smile. Any time. Right, George said, clearing her throat and poking Bess in the back. Now I must put everything back in place. Be careful going down, Jacques said as he held the door open for them. Those stairs are not very strong. We will, Jacques, Nancy said, snapping on her penlight. Thank you. With Bess and then George following close behind, Nancy led the way through the landing and down the stairs. Blah, blah, blah. Her leg ached badly now, and she had to watch her footing. All three girls were silent as they climbed carefully downward. Are we almost there? Bess whispered a few minutes later. I think so. That looks like the ground floor right below us, Nancy answered softly. I don't know about you guys, George said, bringing up the rear, but I'm ready to pack it in. It's been quite a... But George never finished her sentence. A sickening crunch of splintering wood filled the air, echoing through the walls of the empty tower. Whoa, help! George called frantically. Nancy rolled around, quickly flashing her light up the steps behind her. She was just in time to see George go crashing through the stairs, plunging straight for the floor below. End of chapter 9. Tara, that comment was a for real thing. Thankfully, some other people commented very nice things in defense of me, but I was just like, bruh. I forgot reading. You right, Tomas. The room. Favorite great-grandson. It is an honorable title. Hi, Twixie. Chapter 10. Nancy gets Jacques deported. Thank you for complimenting the reading. Why does reading take so much out of me? Oh, look. Whoa! Oh, the cap screen. Oh, that's not spooky, is it? One more chapter to go. Dr. Orwell. The optometrist that worked with Olaf to get the children hypnotized. Terror. I have those moments every stream. Oh, it looked like I was wearing her glasses. Oh, okay. Oh, because the swirlies? I got you. Good morning, Shannon. One more chapter to go. Chapter 10. Nancy gets I'm just kidding. The eavesdropper. George, quick! Nancy called out as she saw her friend plunge through the tower's quick, rickety stairs. Grab something! George reached out and with her right hand swiftly grabbed the step above her head. She teetered for a second as she struggled to hang on. Tight! Nancy called, hobbling back up the stairs. Hang on tight! George tried to swing her left arm around to get a better hold on the broken stair, but the fingers of her right hand began to slip and she swung wildly in midair. Bess had already dropped to one knee on the step just below where George had crashed through. George, here! She cried out, thrusting her arm into the gap. Grab my hand, quick! Still thrashing about, George clutched at Bess's hand with her left hand. Kneeling beside Bess, Nancy reached down and grabbed George's right wrist. We've got you, George, she said. We'll pull you up. Just then, the step that Nancy and Bess were kneeling on shifted and gave an ominous creak. Nancy reached out for the wall, accidentally dropping her penlight. As it fell through the open stairs to the floor, they were plunged into darkness. Don't pull me, George said, gripping tight on their hands to steady herself. I don't want you to crash through another stair. Besides, the edge of the wood there is all jagged. I can drop down to the floor below because it's not that far. Be careful, George, Bess said worriedly. I will, George said. On the count of 3, I want you to let go of me. George took a breath and began. 1, 2, 3. Nancy and Bess let go of George's wrists. There was a beat of silence as George fell through the air. Then Nancy heard her drop with a thump onto the stone floor. I even landed on my feet, George called up proudly from the darkness below. Nancy and Bess scuttled down the rest of the stairs to join George. Are you okay? Nancy asked. Except for a couple of sore feet, yes, George answered. That was some drop. No joke, Bess said. That could have been quite an accident. Right, Nancy said. She spotted her penlight shining dimly as it lay on its side and picked it up. Training the beam on the broken step, Nancy gave a low whistle. I can't talk. Maybe it wasn't an accident, George, she said grimly. What do you mean, Nancy? Bess asked. Nancy moved, limping, back up the stairs and ran her light along the sides of the cracked stair. This wasn't caused by age or disrepair, she reported. This step has been sawed. Sawed? George called from below. You mean someone made me fall on purpose? Sure looks that way, Nancy said. There's a fresh cut on the side, a clean, straight cut. But who? Bess asked. I don't know, Bess, Nancy said, turning and coming slowly back down the stairs. But it seems like someone knew when we went upstairs. Someone rigged that step, hoping that one of us would fall through on our way up or down. Well, I think we've all had enough of this place, George said, heading through the open panel that led into the tiny room. But wait, Bess said. What about Jacques? What about Jacques? George asked, puzzled. She's right, Nancy said. He has to be warned about the step. The girls decided that Bess and George would go back up the tower to tell Jacques to be careful on the stairs. Nancy waited for them at the bottom. When they came back down, Bess said, Let's get out of here. I'm with you, Nancy said. They went back into the tiny room, and George opened the door into the long corridor, and they all passed through. This hall is so creepy, Bess said as the three headed down the dark basement corridor. Well, hang in there, George said. We don't have far to go now. Shh, Nancy said suddenly, halting and snapping off her penlight. The girls crowded together, listening intently. Down the hall, Nancy whispered. Someone's coming from the locker room. The girls stood without breathing, listening to the soft footsteps that moved slowly toward them, coming around the corner from the elevator. A moment later, the light flashed in their eyes. The three girls squinted directly into the blinding beam of a flashlight. "What are you girls up to?" A man's voice snarled behind the light. "What do you think you're doing here?" Nancy took a small step forward, shielding her eyes with one hand. Once out of the direct beam, she could see who held the flashlight. Dexter Egan. "We're here to investigate some strange noises," George began to explain. "Mark and Christy—" "Never mind, George," Nancy interrupted. "Why are you roaming around at this hour of the night, Mr. Egan?" "I'm the caretaker," Egan retorted indignantly. "It's my job to check on things." Then he stopped, cocking his grizzled head to one side. "What's that?" he asked nervously, flashing his light past the girls and down the dark corridor. In the distance, they could hear footsteps heading toward them. A moment later, Jacques walked into the light. "Hello again, girls," Jacques said as he approached the group. "Hello, Dexter." He paused, taking in the scene. "Don't tell me. I'll bet you met the girls here and thought they were up to something." Dexter shrugged and said nothing, though he squinted one eye suspiciously. "Don't worry, okay, Dexter?" Jacques went on. "These girls are friends of mine. Good friends." Dexter mumbled something, but he turned and left them, retreating back around the corner. "I'm not completely sure about him," Jacques said in a low voice once Dexter was out of earshot, "but he sure does know a lot about Wickford Castle. After working here for 30 years, he's been very helpful to me." "How much does he know about your search?" Nancy asked as they walked down the hall toward the ski lockers. "Not everything," Jacques replied, "but he knows more about it than I would like. One night a few weeks ago, Dexter found me working up in the tower room. Since he knows the castle so well, he wanders around everywhere. He asked why I was there. I had to tell him something, so I said I was searching for some papers that I thought were hidden there. I didn't tell him what the papers were." "Did he offer to help you?" Bess asked. "No," Jacques replied, "but I did convince him to give me a key for the door to the tower stairs. I was getting tired of picking that lock every night. It took a while to talk him into it." There's a typo in this book. "He was afraid that Christy and Mark would find out, but I convinced him it was okay." So that must have been the argument that Meg overheard Saturday night in the second-floor hallway, Nancy thought. They reached the locker room, and Bess let out a sigh of relief. Nancy couldn't see Dexter Egan anywhere, so she asked Jacques another question that was on her mind. "Yesterday when we were checking out the library, someone was hiding behind the drapes," she said. "It turned out to be Dexter. Do you have any idea why he would be hiding there?" "No," Jacques said with a shrug. "Do you think he was the person who vandalized the library?" Nancy asked. "It was vandalized sometime after lunch on Saturday." Jacques frowned. "I don't think so," he said. "He acts very, shifty, but I don't think he was the vandal." He turned toward the ski school office. "I still have some work to do in here, but I'll see you girls first thing tomorrow." "Great," Nancy said. "We'll meet you in the lounge at 8. "Au revoir," Jacques said, and with a wave, he just disappeared inside the ski school office. "So," George said, once the girls were back in their room, "I guess the mystery's been solved. Jacques will explain to Mark and Christy tomorrow what he's been up to, and they won't worry about the strange noises at night anymore." "But it doesn't solve everything," Nancy said, stretching out on her bed. Her leg was aching badly, and she leaned forward and carefully tucked a pillow under it. "We still don't know who vandalized the library. Was it Jacques, Dexter, or someone else? And who trapped us in the elevator that first day, George? Who locked Lisa in the staircase, and who was the person in black out by the tower today?" "That couldn't have been Jacques," Bess declared. "He wouldn't be looking for an outside entrance. He already knows a way into the tower." "So does Dexter," George pointed out. "Maybe Jacques isn't the only person who's hunting for the letters," Nancy said slowly. "What if someone else learned about them in some other way, like from one of the books in the library?" "Those letters could be very valuable, more than Jacques realizes," George said. "Someone may want to publish them." "True," Nancy said. "Of course, Jacques himself may know more than he's letting on. We still don't know him very well. We should keep watching him." "Nancy," Bess said, "you can't suspect Jacques. He wouldn't do anything wrong. Jacques is too—" "Look," Nancy said, interrupting her. "All we know for sure is that someone at Wickford Castle is determined to find the Queen's letters. Whoever it is will do anything to avoid discovery, even harm us. From now on, we must be suspicious of everyone." On Wednesday morning, Nancy slipped into hunter green stirrup pants with a bright red down vest layered over a white turtleneck. The cousins wore jeans with colorful ski sweaters. When they got downstairs, Jacques was waiting for them in the lounge, dressed in black ski pants and a burgundy sweater. A soft, admiring sigh escaped from Bess as he stood to join them. Jacques and the girls headed straight for Mark and Christy's office. Nancy knocked on the door. Good morning, folks, Mark said cheerfully as he opened the door. He seemed a bit surprised, though, to see Jacques with Nancy and her friends. How can we help you? We need to talk to you and Christy, Nancy said. It's important. No problem, Mark said. Come on in. As the four young people filed in, Gus left his favorite spot in the morning sun to sit next to Nancy. Christy looked up from the computer screen where she was typing in room reservations. Hey, everyone, she said brightly. Have a seat. Mark propped the door open and then seated himself at the keyhole desk. So what's going on? He asked. Something has come up, Nancy said, perching on a windowsill and gently scratching Gus's ear. I think Jacques can explain. Jacques found a chair, cleared his throat, and began. First he explained about the nighttime noises, and then he went on to tell the story of his great-grandfather's secret. Everyone was leaning forward intently to hear Jacques' quiet, husky voice. But then out of the corner of her eye, Nancy saw something moving just outside the partly opened office door. She turned and looked over her shoulder toward the hall. Beside her, Gus raised his head and bristled. She saw nothing but a shadow thrown by the morning sun against the corridor wall. As Nancy watched, the shadow moved slightly, then stopped. It was clearly a person crouching by the office door. Nancy turned quickly to Jacques and raised her finger to her lips to silence him, but he was so caught up in his tale he didn't notice. And there he found a bundle of letters tied with a pink ribbon, Jacques was saying. Nancy jumped to her feet. Someone was in the hall listening. Someone had heard his secret. End of chapter 10. Wait, what? That was classic V going, okay, bruh. Not really agreeing with your comment. I don't remember saying that. I'm sorry if it came across as rude. I wasn't meaning to be. Oh yeah, sometimes the music doesn't exactly match. My apologies. I'm just letting music play. I'm glad you're here, Shannon. That darn sentient snowmobile that sawed the floor. Streamquestria. You've got to read the paper, Jacques. MLP? I don't know what MLP is. Oh, the doctor. I was just confused at first until I understood it. Oh, My Little Pony. Okay. Yeah. I know nothing about that fandom either. In fact, the fandom kind of scares me. Alright, well that's it for today. We have 6 more chapters to go, about 50 more pages, which I will read in the 3rd installment. Because I don't know why I like to break books into 3 chunks. I don't know why. It is a cool shirt there. My best friend got it for me. It's a Paramore shirt. It has Hayley Williams on it. Her hair's going everywhere, but let me stand up a little bit. You can't really see it, but it says the world can't keep us down. Hey! Which are lyrics from their song Proof. Okay. The fandom is scurry. Yeah. I mean, they have brony. It has, like, such a negative connotation now. Neckbeards, fedoras... You know, all that jazz. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. I'm going to get off now and do about 400 other things with my day. I'm going to try to be productive today, even though I am very tired and don't want to be productive. I'm going to try to do so anyway. Thank you guys for being here, for sure. I like doing morning streams, even though they tend to be quieter as far as the number of people that enjoy. They just seem to have a very chill kind of atmosphere, which I try to have all the time, don't get me wrong, but I kind of like the morning streams, and I'm glad that you guys are able to join me when you can for them. You're welcome for the stream. My plans are to, what were my, let me look at this. Hang on one sec. Let me look at my own schedule because I cannot remember what it was. My next plan for streaming is going to be Thursday morning, about 10 o'clock. I plan to do some, I plan to finish the main story of Pokemon Emerald. I'm going to go ahead and catch up to where I was before the game crashed, and then finish Victory Road. Since you guys already saw the Wally battle, I think that's the only like event that happens in Victory Road. So I'm just gonna get through Victory Road and do a bunch of level grinding, so that when I start my stream on Thursday morning, we will be ready to go to tackle the Elite Four and Champion. So that's my plan, and then we will be completely done with Pokemon Emerald, which will be fantastic and feel great. I'll revisit it at times to do the after game stuff, like the Battle Frontier and things like that. But that's not going to be a focus. It'll be kind of like a down the road. I'll revisit it. That way that I can get started on Detective Pikachu, because I'm really excited about doing that. And I'm excited about blind streaming that because it's going to be so different, I have a feeling. So that's kind of my plan. After Thursday, I also plan to do Friday morning. I'd like to get some more progress done in Ocarina of Time. I have not played that since Tara and Rob were in town and hanging out with me. So I definitely want to get some progress done on that. And then Saturday, I'd like to revisit Paper Mario, because I haven't played that in literal months, and I'd like to continue that as well. So that's kind of my plan for the rest of the week. Sorry for kind of rambling here at the end. But that's kind of my plan. Yeah, exactly, Rob. Have a closing 20-minute dialogue. You're welcome for the stream, Tomas. No, I'm not reading any more chapters tonight. Kappa, face over yourself. How about a V-lol? Oh, it's like over my face. Yeah. I'll do some editing later to this video. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to. Anyway, that's all she wrote for today. Have a good day. Take care of yourselves. As always, much love from me to you. I'll leave you with a little bit of music. Bye, guys. Love y'all.